We are taking a spooky walk in the dark. I want to tell you some stories about the macabre and the fateful. It is about death. My goodness, I think we've got a friend. For how many will know the hour or the day that they will meet their death? Some believe that the time and the way is destined. Others believe it is all time and chance. Either way, it is hard to imagine the thoughts and the feelings of those who have come to that certain event in such gruesome ways. And who would have thought that the beautiful national park called Yellowstone would be the place? A place of beauty, much like where I walk tonight, only 10 times more beautiful and grand. Well, these stories I tell you are true. Do not doubt their reality, and please do learn from the fateful mistakes of those who have gone before you. Part 1. Hot pools. Hot pools. My. Where is he? We've got company, for sure. Story 1. David and Ronald were good friends. You have to be to take a good long trip from Southern California to Yellowstone National Park. They had some time to pass during the summer of 1981, and nothing sounded better than an exciting road trip. David was just 24, and Ronald was 1 year his senior, but they shared an equal love of the wilderness. They decided to take David's dog with them. It was a beautiful Great Dane, and David had named him Moosey. The ride-up was full of anticipation, and they arrived at the Fountain Paint Pot parking lot at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. David and Ronald left the windows. David and Ronald left the windows partially down for the dog. Yellowstone, being a very cool temperature even in the summer, knew that Moosey would be okay, so they locked up the car and went for a stroll along the boardwalk. Their thoughtful conversation was eventually interrupted by the sound of a dog yelping and a bystander saying, "Oh, look, poor thing." David was very familiar with his own dog's yelping sounds and turned on his heel and ran in that direction. Ronald was right behind him. They arrived at the edge of Celestine Pool, a hot spring that measured 202 degrees Fahrenheit. Both Ronald and David watched for a fleeting moment as Moosey flailed around in the boiling water. No idea how he got out of the car. A million thoughts must have entered David's head at this moment, except for the one that he was powerless to help his dog, for he prepared to jump in after him. Ronald and a bystander noticed what he was doing and yelled at him, "Don't go in there." David yelled back with determination, "Like hell I won't." Several more people yelled at him to stop, but David took 2 steps into the pool and then dove headlong into the boiling water. He swam to the dog. Hear a train and a coyote, I think. Would probably better to turn around here. Don't you think? Let us continue our story. He swam to the dog and went completely underwater again in an attempt to get the dog to the shore. Boy, the wildlife is busy tonight. He swam to the dog and went completely underwater again in an attempt to get to the shore. But he had to release him and began climbing out himself. Ronald stepped into the shallows at the edge of the pool, reaching out to David and pulled him completely out. Never mind the pain to his own feet as he was painfully scalded with 2nd-degree burns. Here comes a train. As they slowly walked toward the boardwalk, David muttered to Ronald, "That was stupid. How bad am I?" Ronald tried to reassure him, but was interrupted by David reiterating softly, "That was a stupid thing I did." Ronald had an overwhelming feeling that he was walking next to a corpse. Though Ronald did not want to stare, he could see in his peripheral vision very clearly that David's skin was already peeling off. As they came to a stop, Ronald looked into David's eyes. They had turned completely white, and he appeared to be blind. A concerned bystander rushed up to help by trying to remove David's shoes. Ronald and those looking on were horrified to see his skin come right off his feet along with the shoe. Ronald yelled, "Don't do that." And David said, "It doesn't matter." Rangers later on reported finding 2 large pieces of skin shaped like human hands beside the Celestine pool. David had experienced 3rd-degree burns over 100% of his body, including his head. A ranger who went to the burn clinic with him remembers thinking there was little chance for the victim's survival. He was blind, and most of his skin was coming off. David's dog died in this hot spring pool and was not rescued. It was noted later that the oils from the dog's body caused small eruptions in the pool. David died the following morning in Salt Lake City Hospital. Story 2. The sun was going down, and shadows covered the woods as the evening lingered peacefully for Ranger Keats, who rested in the park's work crew bunkhouse. Suddenly, screams pierced the night. A government truck driver named Halstead also heard the screams. Both men ran to the West Thumb Geyser Basin as fast as they could, following the sounds of the screams. They saw a man staggering through the trees toward the road, screaming at the top of his voice, "Help! I have fallen into a pool and I am burned all over." Keats, who was also a doctor, said this: "I was calling to Halstead, who was holding him, not to handle him roughly. We have another visitor. You see him, anybody? Can't see him. Let's continue our story. I took hold of the man and, asking Halstead for his knife, laid the man on his back and proceeded to cut away his clothing as carefully as possible, for I could see even in that dim light that the skin had been slipped from large areas on his body and extremities. In 2 minutes, a large crowd had been attracted to the scene, including all the employees of the road camp and the camping company. While I was cutting away his clothing, I asked for a comforter to lay him on, so as not to get any foreign matter into the areas which were burned. By this time, it was nothing. By this time, my wife arrived with the car and Ranger Miller with my medicine kit. As soon as his clothing was all removed, thought I heard something. Okay. As soon as his clothing was all removed, I administered a half grain of morphine. I commandeered all the olive oil and cooking oils from the delicatessen and the road camp. Mrs. Evans of the road camp had 3 pints of olive oil with which I covered the entire body, then obtained clean sheets from the camping company. I wrapped Mr. Eakins in them so that the trunk and extremities were completely covered, then soaked the sheets in oil. I gave mineral oil by mouth to relieve the burning which the esophagus and trachea had sustained when the victim had gulped hot water into his mouth and had swallowed it. Where is that owl? Where is it? Step back a little bit here. Can't see him. It was found out later that Reverend Eakins of Saratoga, Wyoming, had slipped and fallen into an unidentified hot spring. In his attempt to get out of the pool, he walked back into another. The pain from the searing hot water caused him to lose his footing, and he fell headlong into the first pool. He had gone completely underwater, but was still able to somehow pull himself out without help. It is not said or reported where his wife and child were when this happened. The fact that Eakin's head was submerged increased his inevitable death because the burns were nearly as extreme internally as externally from swallowing the hot water. The most frightening thing about falling into a hot spring is its great possibility of remaining fully aware and awake for many hours while awaiting death. Okay, story 3. I may have to turn back soon here. It's looking pretty dark and spooky out here. It's awfully dark out here. I'll try to keep on with my story. Forgive me if I stop. We're on story 3. It had been a long day for the employees of Yellowstone National Park at the Old Faithful Lodge. A group of about 20 people decided to go out and have a late night party. Hot potting, they called it. And this would entail locating the warm water springs and going bathing. What is that? Everyone had a great time, but unbeknownst to them, one of the party would never return. When Cressy, 24 years old, never showed up to work on Monday, a search began. FBI were brought into the mystery of Cressy's death because investigators learned that he had not been well liked by his fellow employees. They suspected foul play, and 2 days later his body would be discovered by a small child who had been fishing with his father. He was found dead in an unmarked boiling hot spring. I'm getting so nervous I'm having a hard time telling my story. Cressy's body could not be fully recovered because it had been cooking in the hot spring for more than 2 days. Getting out of here. Okay, I've turned around. I'm getting out of here. Let's back up a little bit. Cressy's body was found dead in an unmarked boiling hot spring. His body could not be fully recovered because it had been cooking. His body had been cooking in a hot spring for more than 2 days. Exactly how Cressy fell into a pool is a mystery, but possibly it was a simple misstep in the dark. Eventually, his death was ruled upon as an accident. Okay, part 2. This is about the buffalo. Death by buffalo. There is perhaps not an animal that roams in this or in the wilds of any other country more fierce and forbidding than a buffalo. Neither polar bear nor the Bengal tiger surpass that animal in ferocity. Alexander Ross, Fur Trapper, 1825. In Yellowstone National Park, a ranger was once approached by a man with a wild look in his eyes, and he asked, "Can you tell me something? These animals that are just running around here, they couldn't be wild, could they? Or you wouldn't have them just running around loose?" The ranger tried not to laugh or look horrified either one. But he knew this man was an injury waiting to happen. Story 1. Excerpt from Death in Yellowstone. On March 22nd, 1902, Dick Rock, 49. Oh, here we are at the ballpark. Okay, I can rest easier now. Let's start that story over, shall we? On March 22nd, 1902, Dick Rock, 49 years old, a well-known Yellowstone area poacher and animal keeper, was killed by one of his own bison near Henry's Lake, just outside the park. He was attempting to show a friend how tame they had become. Several people had warned Dick that the bison would kill him, but he did not listen. One Saturday morning at 7 a.m., when Dick was feeding a bison, it became enraged and charged him, pinning him against the corral. His screams brought Mrs. Rock and several people from a nearby ranch. What they saw horrified them. Over and over, the bison pitched Dick's body up into the air and gored him with its horns every time it hit the ground. The bison ripped all the clothes from Dick's body and left him with 29 horn holes. Mrs. May Garner remembered that when they got Dick out of there, his eyelids twitched a time or two, and he was gone. Story 2. A young man named Marvin, 30 years old, drove up to Yellowstone with his family from Spokane, Washington. They stopped at Fountain Flats, north of Old Faithful. Fields look pretty here at night, don't they? I think I'll turn around. It was July 1971 when Marvin and his wife and 3 children spotted a bull buffalo in the meadow. Marvin decided to approach the bison and got within 20 feet of it to take a photograph. The 2,000-pound animal got up and charged him, gored him, and threw him 12 feet in the air. The animal's horns had ripped open Marvin's abdomen and pierced his liver. Even though he had a large hole in his side, he tried to get up, but fell back down to the ground, groaning. His wife and children watched him die. His wife later admitted that her husband had been too close to the bison. And amazingly, in the possession of this family was the pamphlet that had warned of dangerous animals. Part 3. Bears. Bears. Make noise. Look for trees to climb. Play dead if you cannot find a tree. Never feed a bear. National Park Service advice to backpackers in Yellowstone. Story 1. One author named William Rush came upon a woman having a conversation with a ranger in Yellowstone National Park. He writes, "Lady, you mustn't do that. You've been told time and time again not to feed that bear." "Oh, he won't hurt me," replied the lady. "He's so cute standing there. He's the gentlest bear in the park." "Yes, I know," assented the ranger. "But even tame bears hurt people quite often. They don't mean to. It's always an accident. But the injury is just as bad. It's against the rules. Why can't you obey the regulations?" "Oh, bother the regulations," said the lady scornfully. "You rangers are always harping on regulations. This bear is hungry. Look here, I'll show you how eager he is to get even a small morsel of bread." The ranger shook his head. "I really wish you would not feed the bear." He said that and rode away without waiting for the lady to demonstrate how hungry her pet bear was. Life was probably dull for this woman, staying all day in a camp with nothing much to do but admire the scenery. When a car drove up a few minutes after the ranger had gone, she called the people. "Let me show you my bear's trick. He's just too cute for anything." They gathered around, and the woman held a piece of candy at full length above her head, her arms full length above her head. The bear, a great black fellow, rose on his hind feet and easily reached the candy. The woman backed away a few steps and offered another piece. The bear followed, walking on his hind legs, and took the candy just as before. It was fun to make such a big fellow walk around and eat candy out of her hand. Everybody laughed and applauded. "Such quaint creatures, those bears," exclaimed one of the ladies from the automobile party. "So tame, ever so cute and gentle." They watched until the woman tired of the game. She stood directly in front of the bear, facing him, but offering no more candy. "Go away now," she ordered. "No more candy for you today." She did not move, and the bear dropped down on all fours, and he put out his front feet toward her, much as he would to a tree or any other convenient object to ease his descent. The woman screamed as his paws touched her shoulders. His claws, sharp as knives, seeking support, ripped through her clothing and skin. They tore deep cuts a foot long across her breasts, and blood spurted from them. The woman fainted. The bear backed away and disappeared into the pandemonium that ensued. One of the men ordered an ambulance by telephone, then drove post-haste to the ranger station. There the apprehensive ranger heard the old familiar tale. "Something terrible's happened. A bear just tore the breasts off a woman. Kill the bear. He must be killed. He is a dangerous beast. Kill the wicked bear." So the story went, told by the very people who had but just a few minutes before thought he was cute. Story 2. Harry and his friend Philip were on summer college break. It was only June when, in their restlessness, they decided to hitchhike all the way from Alabama to Yellowstone National Park's north entrance in Montana. Both were in their 20s and felt pretty fearless. They packed bags for a great camping adventure. And near the entrance, they were picked up by a gal named Vicky, who just happened to be a Yellowstone housekeeper in the park. She heard their plans and gave warning to them about bears and advised them to visit the ranger station. They didn't. Of course they didn't. Vicky dropped Harry and Philip off at Old Faithful. And that was when they decided to backpack into and beyond a thermal area and set up an illegal campsite. The nearest campsite being 16 miles away, they took the path of least resistance. They stayed there and camped Friday night and Saturday all day, producing quite the mess of food strewn around their camp. Thought I heard something. I was wrong. Just gonna turn around here. Being somewhat close to Old Faithful Inn, they decided to go in for drinks late that Saturday night. It was well past midnight when they headed back to camp, hoping to sleep off a good buzz. Fortunately, they did not fall into any hot pools in the dark. But in the wee hours of Sunday morning, they arrived at their campsite, surprising a grizzly foraging through their mess, which then frightened the bear into defending its newfound food supply. Philip saw the bear charging from only 5 feet away and quickly dove to his left and rolled down an embankment. From the bottom of the slope, he could hear his friend Harry cry out, "Help me, Philip, help me." And then silence. And then silence. Philip ran to Old Faithful Inn and fell to the floor shouting, "Bear! Bear! He has my friend!" Harry's body was found about 5 a.m. Ah, my friend, the owl is out here too. Harry's body was found about 5 a.m. Rangers report that about 25% of his body had been eaten by the bear. He died of suffocation caused by major damage to his trachea. His whole pelvic region was missing. As a result, the grizzly was trapped, killed, and examined. Human hairs were found on its claws and in its digestive system that were identified as belonging to Harry. That's so gruesome and so sad. My nature-loving friends, beware. Though we tame and we harness in this earth, we are but human. Respect with awe that which God has created. And now I must leave you to walk along beside me in silence. Good night.